Well, hello and welcome. Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be joining you all today to have an awesome discussion on inclusive leadership, navigating challenges to ascend and thrive wherever you are in the world. And speaking of where I am in the world today, I'm coming to you from my home studio in Tampa, Florida. I'm a middle-aged white woman who's mostly able-bodied. I have red hair. I am in Tampa, Florida, in the Eastern time zone, the most privileged time zone in the entire world. And I live right near the land that was once occupied by the Seminole tribe of Florida. And in honor of recognition, it is Asian American Pacific Heritage Month. It's also Mental Health Awareness Month, all very important things to drive inclusive for leaders. And I'm thrilled to be coming to you all today. I'm going to share quickly a little bit about empowering differences. If you didn't know, it's a 4-step process to drive empowerment for all of your leaders. But I really want to bring in my special guest so you can learn a little bit more about inclusive leadership, because that's our topic today. And Dr. Ginny Baro is here. I know she's here somewhere in the world. Let me find her. Okay, here she is. She's here. She's ready. She's here to join us. Hey, there you are.
Hi, Ashley. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
I'm so honored that you're here. So I would love for you to take a few moments and talk to people about what it is that you do, how you move in the world, and highlight you in this moment while we're going live.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Dr. Ginny Barrow. I am an international transformational speaker, leadership coach, career strategist, and #1 best-selling author. Ashley and I met through networking, which is, I always tell all my audiences, there is such a power in networking. And inclusive leadership is in my wheelhouse. I was in the corporate world for over 25 years. I have been running Executive Bound for the last 5 years, and my dream today, my why, is to populate the world with inclusive leaders who can really take care of our talent and help everybody reach their full potential. So it's such a joy to be with you and to have this empowering conversation with Ashley. Are you there, Ashley? There
I'm
you
here.
are.
I swear I'm here. I'm
There you
so
are.
thrilled. No, this is great. And I know that we're going to definitely talk about this whole navigating challenges, because there's a lot of challenges that everything is going on in this world. It almost seems like every minute that goes by, there's something going on. But so I guess we should start. Why is inclusive leadership important? Why don't that be our first kind of discussion?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting because we all have such different backgrounds. And those of you who already know me know that I'm an immigrant. I came to the US when I was a freshman in high school. I was born and raised in a small village near Haiti. And so when I came to this country, I was starting from scratch. I didn't know the language, I didn't know the culture. And when I learned English, graduated from high school to begin to study computer science and economics in college. When I graduated in 1991, I was at a loss, right? I was starting a whole new life as a professional woman, a Latina woman, and I was so fortunate that I found very inclusive leaders who, from back in 1991, saw my talent and said, you know what, Ginny, you want to do that? Go for it. They supported me, they trusted me, they gave me stretch assignments. They also created opportunities for me to take those leadership roles. And I also knew personally how important it was for me to be able to take myself to my next level. So I always continue to study and got my MBA, got my master's in computer science, earned my PhD. And I say all of this around why being inclusive is important is because when we are inclusive, we get the best from our talent. We allow the genius that everybody brings to come to the surface. When we're not inclusive, we hire people of all backgrounds, and we don't want to listen to what they have to say. So to me, this diversity of thought and backgrounds is what's going to give us the best solutions, the most innovation. It's going to allow us to really tap into the needs of our marketplace, our clients, our customers, and deliver the services and products that are going to make our company and our employees successful. So to me, it's a no-brainer, Ashley, that inclusive leadership is where the game is at.
Yeah, yeah, and I see it definitely the same. But I want to highlight this thought around how we're all different. And I, as you know from my research, I studied the 10 most common differences that we hold as humans. And each of these 10 differences all are make up every one of the 7 billion different people on this planet, and how each one requires us to think a little bit differently in how we build and cultivate and grow people in our organizations. So it's that part first is what gets me. And then the other part that I think, and this will have a lot big of ramifications on the rest of our discussion, is yeah, there's the great resignation happening in this world right now, and people are trying to hire. Every place is shorthanded. Every place is trying to hire the right people. But it's interesting, if we focused just as much energy and effort on retaining our people,
Absolutely.
then we wouldn't have as many issues in trying to find the right people.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
let's talk about what is causing people to leave, right? The great resignation. What have been some of the top reasons that people that the research is showing why people are leaving? One of them is not feeling valued. And so when you're not inclusive as a leader, you're not valuing your people. And I feel like, you know what? I don't get any significance in here in this role. And significance is one of our human needs. I also don't get to contribute to the best of my abilities. The other reason why people are leaving is because they don't feel a sense of belonging. And that again goes back to inclusion. So people, actually, I have a lot to say about this topic, but you know, when people talk about DE&I and belonging, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and everybody's, I know that so many people have the best, in their hearts, but I also know that many people are just checking the box. And it's not about checking a box for me. It really is about creating a workplace that welcomes the diversity of thoughts, the diversity of backgrounds, and that allows anyone who's willing to grow the opportunity to grow and to contribute what they have to contribute.
Yeah.
So, that is so important to me.
Yeah, and I think that opportunity that you mentioned is a big part of where people are seeing these challenges. They're in an organization and they're hoping to grow their career. I know I was one of them, working in the financial services industry at PNC Bank. Yes, I went from a part-time bank teller to becoming the national vice president of DEI in 4 years. But then once I got to that DEI position, I was often pigeonholed in relation to one of my diversity or one of my differences. And I was the SME on everything LGBTQ or trans items. And I would, advise on benefits. I would advise on marketing. I would advise on everything in relation to that difference. And I kept getting pigeonholed in relation to that.
Yes.
That being one of the big challenges is that pigeonholing of
Mhm.
right. Like, I'm not a transgender business professional. I'm a business professional.
Absolutely.
And how do I move away from that and focus on driving impacts for me as a leader, right? And I
Mhm.
mean, like, that's this thing that just keeps coming up. And by the way, if you're joining on the stream and you have questions, we're saving plenty of time to hash out your questions on inclusive leadership. And if you have a challenge as well that's out there that you want us to talk about, or you have something that you're navigating, or you're trying to figure out how to ascend and thrive in the organization, go right to the chat now and put those in the chat, because we want to talk about them, and we will try to get to all the questions and comments that you have during our live. And if you're watching the replay, because I know that a lot of people have a lot of responsibilities in this world, definitely still put the comments in the chat, because we'll keep track of those as we go through. The recording will live on LinkedIn Live and other live platforms and we'll be highlighting this through our channels. So know that we'll still connect. But go ahead. I know that I was just giving a lot of notes and also chiming in.
No, if we move to talk about what is causing people as it relates to what are some of the challenges that you and I actually see in our clients, and why they seek us out. A lot of the challenge has to do with, how do I navigate those challenges in the workplace? How do I navigate the unconscious biases? The performance bias, the affinity bias, likability bias. How do I gain my voice to really express what it is that I want to do here in this company, in this organization? People, and a lot of women, female leaders who I work with, find themselves sometimes in a box. Back to what you were saying. How do I get myself out of that box? Because I know that I'm capable of a lot more. And then how do I really build relationships within my organization where I can share my unique value, where I can share what I can do, and where I get to hear more about potential opportunities for me to grow? If I go into an organization and I'm in the interview process, and I'm going to ask very specific questions, and I guide my clients to ask very specific questions that allow them to see not only what people are saying to them during the interview, but what they notice, is I ask them to ask questions around, so tell me about women here at the company. What would be my opportunities as I join this particular role as director of blank? How many of the women are in those senior leadership roles? And when you get one out of 20 or 25, that speaks volumes. So I believe that what's happening now, Ashley, and the audience, is that people are getting smarter at asking the right questions, so that you are not simply going by the company's mission on their website, but rather getting some real feedback during the interview process to see if this company is the type of place where I would feel that my voice and my contributions will be appreciated. And I can project that by seeing how other women are being valued and appreciated in the environment currently.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, we got a question. So I was thinking maybe we would kind
We
of
did.
incorporate
Oh,
that, because
absolutely.
yeah. So we have a question from one of our LinkedIn users in regards to intergenerational differences as part of inclusive leaderships, and how are we handling many generations in the workforce. I know for me, I'll kind of take this in relation to age being one of the 10 most common differences that I studied in my empowerment research. Finding that different path of actions that would drive change for those who are of different age classification groups. Because everyone is going to access information or data a lot differently. It's kind of interesting. It's one of the reasons why when I do an event, I do a snail mail email, I do a live event on social media, I do a follow-up campaign, and then I sometimes I send people to things where they can actually literally download and print real things, right? And so that way, this information that I'm sharing on empowerment and leadership can be assessed by people across all different types of genres and generations. And it's interesting, if you're part of an organization and you're not planning to reach people on so many different platforms at the same time as well, right? Like, so we're streaming on Facebook, but we're also on LinkedIn, but we're also, right? So, I mean, just that nature of doing the way that we're having this conversation is in that that realm to try to do that. But org also have that kind of responsibility where they can be engaging with their employees in different mediums, different continuums, and being purposeful to also educate other people in the workforce that those employees exist across all these different age classification groups. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on intergenerational
Yeah,
differences?
to me, from the leadership perspective, it really boils down to how do we treat our employees, period, right? When we're hiring, when we are looking at potential pools of talent, if we're only going to a source that's going to give us a specific demographic, we're going to find ourselves always going to the same water hole, as we say, right? So as hiring managers, we need to be cognizant of that and realizing that there is power in our differences and similarities. So if you look at your team and your team is composed of all people of very similar age, same genders, and you don't have that mix because you have been going to the same source to hire from, that could be one of the reasons why you don't see the variety. But how do you handle it as a leader? You have to be self-aware, right? You have to be self-aware that you're looking at a pool of candidates that is diverse. And what I mean by that is people who just graduated college, but it really depends on the role. Sometimes you don't need an entry level person. You need somebody who's had 5 to 10 years of experience, right? So if you're looking at people who have the right qualifications, are you looking at different types of people, which includes people of different ages? It is no secret that many people are experiencing ageism. I'm 53 years old, and I would be petrified right now to be in the workforce looking for a full time job. I'm running my own business for the past 5 years, but I know from my clients who are in their 50s and even 60s how it is for them. They find that they're being discriminated against because of their age. And they've even heard, like, this person's only going to give me another 5 years. I need someone who can give me 10. And so when you are that leader and you have to make those decisions, you have to weigh the value that you bring to your team when you have somebody who's experienced, who's been around the block a few times, and somebody who's got a new perspective, a new way of looking at things. And when you combine people with all these different backgrounds, again, you're going to come out with a better product and a better service.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this whole construct. This aligns really well to my first step in empowering your differences, which is to know yourself. Empowerment will always start and end with you as the individual. You are going to be the only one who can identify what is empowering to you. And that's the construct that I've built to help people with that. And one of the things that I offer to help people is my empowerment self-assessment. And you can access my self-assessment for free right there on my website, empoweringdifferences.com/the self-assessment or /self-assessment. Either one will get you there. Um, and that's where you can download my assessment for free, because I think it's going to help you really categorize where you live in the world in relation to comfort zone, privilege, empowerment of others, and then your differences. But I also created a differences assessment to help you really categorize where your differences live in relation to privilege and disprivilege. Because, like I mentioned, I studied the 10 most common differences that we have as humans. And it's a key principle as an inclusive leadership to have that awareness that you were just talking about of where you fit in relation to the difference. So, like, I know and I move as a leader and know that I have white privilege, especially when I'm here in America and I'm doing business in America and I operate, then that means that now because I have that awareness that I have a privilege, that is not a bad word, depending upon how you use it. And when I use my privilege in America, I use it to amplify others and build them up. And so everyone lives on this access of privilege to disprivilege in relation to our differences. So I think that's a really important thing to consider when you're building out your own inclusive leadership plan.
Yeah. We have a question, Ashley, in the chat that says, since all levels of education are not accessible to all people, how do you navigate that in hiring practice to ensure that degrees aren't the only considerations? Do you have a way for them to prove their strengths if they didn't have the privilege of the college degree? I mean, if I were to answer that question, the number one is, I believe that what happens, and I have clients who don't have a college degree, by the way, is that your experience speaks for itself. When you are looking at a job description and you look all the criteria that the job requires, and you get to the part where it says education, that's a criteria that we're going to still see for a long time. I don't know that that's going to go away, but I do believe that what's going to happen is we're going to be embracing more of a self-education. So I am 100% in agreement that if you have what it takes in terms of the credentials, if you have the experience to do the job that I need you to do, that I am all for you when I speak with you during the interview, you sharing with me the experiences you've had that show me that you can handle what I'm asking or what I need for this particular role. And that I believe education will become less germane, less relevant as we go more and more into our careers and can bring our experiences to speak for themselves.
Yeah, and this is one of those barriers, right? This is a challenge that exists. I can tell you, I mean, you know my background. I never went to college. Not that I didn't want to go, I definitely wanted to go, but I just didn't have the means or the capability to be able to navigate that because I was battling my gender identity at that time a lot, and it was really affecting my ability to be in a learning environment. Um, and so I never went to college. That didn't make me any less of a DEI officer in my 6 years that I did that job. But getting to that job was literally the hardest thing, was because of the fact that I did not have any kind of degree. So what did I do? I went and I got a DEI certification. I passed a Series 7 and a 66 investment. I was a registered investment advisor. There was reasons for that, to gain other additional learned behaviors. But then I also was an HR leader of 50 people in my prior career. And I combined all of those experience with my lived experience around facing discrimination, harassment, and homelessness, and having a social economic class as a -30 position as an out transgender woman living in Florida in the United States. What was that like? So all of those lived experiences, working as an HR leader of 50 people, recruiting, hiring, training, developing people every day, then navigating through that, and then gaining additional learned certifications. So education is one of the 10 most common differences that I studied. And of course, enhancing your education and then enlightening others through how you communicate that is a big part of my empowerment platform, and helping you navigate that in your journey. But as a leader, because that leader is potentially anyone on this planet, right? All 7 billion people could be leaders if they display leadership skills and attributes. So these are challenges that will always exist, but it's how you navigate, how you communicate it, and then how you enhance what you have as an individual. And then how you, like, the communicated part is really important too. I know I'm talking a lot, but I really want you to know that I had to communicate that to the manager of the diversity and inclusion program. She was the chief diversity officer, and I wanted to work on her team. So I wanted to address my lack of formal education head on in the discussion. And I said, these are the other 6 people you have on your team. Every single one has a college degree. You need to have my perspective on this team, because 30% of this company does not have a formal degree. And how can the diversity and inclusion team represent diversity and inclusion while everyone is required to have an educational background of that stature? And what was her response to me, right? Like, it was,
you're right.
Good point.
That's right. Absolutely, yeah. Ashley. We have another question in the chat.
Yes, I see. This is great. So go ahead. Yeah.
So it says that how do you ensure that the behaviors of the team is inclusive when their beliefs may not align with them? And so, listen, I see inclusion as fairness. That's just how I see it. I want to be fair to everybody that works for me as a coach, a leadership coach to leaders. I want to make sure that we are developing leadership skills that allow us to see everyone for the qualities that they bring. There's something that I teach called your unique value proposition. We pull that out of you when you work with me because I think it's so important for you to know what you bring to the table. And here's the thing, everyone has a unique value proposition. It's not about believing in you or believing in her or believing in they. It's about the fact that everybody has a unique value. So if I go to my leadership role to hire, to be part of a team, to be a collaborate with other people across the organization, and my belief is that everyone that I interact with has something valuable to contribute, it has nothing to do with my belief system around whether Ginny should or Ashley should. If I harness that belief that everyone has something valuable to contribute, I will ask for people's voices to come into the conversation. So if you notice behaviors that are not inclusive and you happen to be the leader, that is when you would have a one-on-one conversation. If you notice that people in the meeting are not letting other voices in because they're extroverts and they're excited and they just want to talk the whole time, you have to pull them into the meeting and into your office or into your virtual office and say to them, for example, Ginny, I noticed that in the meeting you were very excited about the topic. I know we love this topic. And I also noticed that most people were quiet. So when you notice that people are quiet, that's probably a good cue to ask them a question and say, okay, so I know that I've been talking this last 5 minutes. What else does anybody else, does anybody else have anything to say
Tell
about
me what
that?
you feel about that topic, right?
Yeah.
It has to be
So
an open-ended question.
what's coming up for you? What's coming up for you? So we've been talking about this. What else can we say about this?
Yeah.
What's another option for this? What's another alternative? And then that allows other people to come into the conversation. But notice how it requires you to mentor your person, your people, to mentor and coach them. And that requires us to ask them empowering questions too, that start with what or how, right? Like,
Yes.
what was it like for you to be in the meeting and not see anybody respond?
Well, one of my good friends just published a book. It's called "Tell Me About That."
Tell me about that. Tell me a little bit more about
That's
that.
literally the title of his
Yes,
book, which I
I
really
love
love.
it. I
Um,
love it.
but yeah, I mean, I think that we're really, I feel like that we're talking a lot about navigating the challenges, right?
Yes, yes.
And we're presenting a few of them, but let's what other challenges do you think that are out there? I really want to get, especially for female leaders. I know that that was a big part of what we were going to talk about.
Well,
Um,
the silent challenge is the unconscious biases.
mm,
I mean, that is just always on the table. And we all have them, by the way. This is not exclusive to one group or anyone in particular. This is something that we need to become more self aware about in terms of our beliefs. One of them is performance bias. Do you feel that this person, because he's a man, this person is smarter than me or that performs better than me? And do you have any bias toward wanting to work with someone more than you do with someone else? These are the kinds of biases that we are fighting every single day. And in my training, my leadership training, the Fearless Leadership Mastermind, we dissect these biases to one, recognize if we as the leader are actually living in these biases, and also to recognize them in the environment so that if we notice them within our teams, that we can address them. So that to me is the silent challenge. Likability bias. Most people like to interact with people that look like them and talk like them and think like them, right? The affinity bias. So if that is the case and you notice, you know what? If I look at my network, everybody's Latino, everybody's this, everybody's that, you're like, not a lot of variety in my own network. Maybe I need to look at this. What is, what am I believing that I'm creating this network that is so homogeneous, right?
We're mixing it up now, aren't we? Together, aren't we?
Exactly.
Well,
Because
you mentioned the leadership training, so I wanted to make sure I put the call out. So if
yes,
you're watching, Dr. Ginny's hosting an amazing leadership training, and you can join
in
for free
July,
in
yes.
July.
And it's free. It's 5 days, 1 hour each day. Go to executivebound.com/events, and you can sign up for the Fearless Leaders Challenge coming up in July. It's the predecessor to give people a taste of what my leadership training for female leaders feels like when you are in community, growing, expanding, and being surrounded by other fearless leaders who are on a similar journey as you are, facing very similar
I love it.
challenges. And
I love
we
it.
don't need to do this alone, Ashley. We don't need to do this alone. There's no need for this. We have frameworks. We have we have done the legwork for you to really empower yourself, to develop your self leadership so that you can really advance and get to that next level without waiting years and decades to do so.
Yeah. Well, another question. We had a few more questions come in. I know Caroline had said one. She was talking about. I'm guessing this is my book, the 10 most common differences. And yes, neurodiversity is looped in with our physical abilities or our differences through our own makeup.
Mhm.
Is definitely one of the 10 differences that I've studied in relation to empowerment. And so it's interesting how the 10 empowering actions all shift based on each of the 10 differences as you're using my platform. And not to give away the spoiler, but if someone were to literally open my book and go to the last chapter in the book, chapter 20, chapter 3, you'll learn about the differences. And then in chapter 20, you'll learn about all the takeaways and actions. And that's where the prioritization list lives of the 10 empowering actions for each of the 10 most common differences, which is great. But no,
And,
thank you so much for that
and
shout.
give out the title of your book, Ashley, just for people who, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's empowering differences, right? So, and you can access that right on my website, and you can download my assessments right there for free when you engage on my platform,
Awesome.
which is great. But we also had some other questions too. My good friend Megan, we actually were chatting earlier today, so I got to give her a shout out. Uh, so Megan's asked, what is the best way to give honest feedback to executive leadership when you see DEI gaps or areas of opportunity, when you've seen lack of action when other employees have done so before, and it's like that fatigue of asking for things, and then this is a big challenge as I see, where like people are like trying to bring this to your attention, and then it's like eventually it's like, you get frustrated.
Yeah, listen,
Let's
I
unpack
always
that.
I believe in the power of influence. So sometimes we don't go straight. Sometimes we go sideways and then sideways and then sideways to get to the where we're going, right? So what I would say is if you've already given the feedback or other employees have given the feedback and nothing has happened, you look for another influential person who can influence the person that you want to influence. So, for example, if I need to give some feedback and human resources, I'm just going to use as an example, has received the feedback and has not done anything about it in the past, I would think who would be a human resource partner who could be influenced by that could make a difference in helping me share this message. So, for example, if I know that I have a relationship with someone in finance who is a senior leader, who is well respected, and I have that more level of trust, I can actually bring my concern to that leader in finance and say, Ashley, I have noticed a gap in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what we're doing, and I would like to share what that feedback is. And Ashley may be open to listening to that feedback. And then Ashley may be the person who goes to HR and says, Linda or Bob, I wanted to share with you some feedback that I received. about our DE&I efforts. And then he or she is going to share that with the HR person. So that is another way in which we can provide feedback that isn't direct, but that will help us increase our influence by going to another person who has influence with the person who you want to deliver the message to. That's another loophole, if you may, to
Yeah.
try to have the impact that we want to have.
I I love that you. I mean, like you've totally been like stalking on my platform, obviously.
Or
uh,
maybe we're just on the right
I,
path, Ashley,
I
right?
know. Yeah. So we're moving in the same realm. So one of my 10 empowering actions is influence, and and the empowering action of influence is totally right. It's about branding and marketing and the way in which you're then going to paint that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely is also about making it somebody else's idea. I have a really great example of this. I was fighting for a lot of equality and diversity and spend, right? Because getting an organization to commit money towards a cause is sometimes very difficult. And I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but this is maybe its own discussional topic that we'll do one day, but political action committees and seeing how organizations spend their money in their PAC, right? And people get really upset about that because sometimes it does not align to be apolitical, right? I mean, sadly, that's just how that works. It depends on the industry that the organization operates in as to where they politically spend their money. And as an employee of that industry, you could be from any side of the political aisle or middle or anything, or completely apolitical, but still it affects you, right? Because and it is a challenge, so that's why I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
But I ended up cultivating a relationship with the head of government affairs, and I told him my story. I literally told him about the challenges that I faced just gaining employment, and how I had a door slammed in my face, and how I got the cops called on me from a job interview. And that's what it's like for people who display lots of differences sometimes because of what we talked about earlier. Unconscious bias exists.
Absolutely.
So I had that conversation. I got the chance to go to lunch with him, and honestly, we cultivated a relationship. And then later on, I made it his idea to champion for equality and diversity and find money in his budget for something that we were fighting for.
That's
So
right.
that made all the difference. Influence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Influence is one of the essential skills that we need to possess and develop as a leader. And it's one of the, I guess, leg stools of um, stool legs, I should say, of the leadership development that we do at the Fearless Leadership Mastermind. We have another question, Ashley, and I think we should start shifting into how can we create opportunities for all driven, high potential female leaders. And this goes into the question that we have from Diana that says, I've been in a couple of interviews in finance. There's not a lot of diversity. The outcome has not been diverse. And how do you handle that? How do you give feedback around that? Look, so I come from an industry that was financial services and technology. Technology, financial services, very similar to that, Diana, right? And so what I notice in terms of giving feedback is that I know that at the end of the day, what is most important for everyone is to find a qualified candidate. I will never bypass that fact, right? We need to hire qualified people who can do the job. And whether that is with a college education or not, right? We talked about the education differences. As long as the person is qualified to do the job, it is our responsibility to ensure that we are giving people who are qualified to do the job the opportunity to interview for the job. The outcome may be that, and I don't know what's happening behind the scenes, that the person who got hired has more years of experience, perhaps has a niche expertise that I needed that maybe wasn't even on the resume or on the job spec. But that when I interview them, I found out that they know about this particular thing that would be very valuable for a company to have from a knowledge-based perspective. So there's a lot of factors that we don't know behind the scenes. And if, because it's so hard to say everything else equal, who is going to get hired? If you have an opportunity to give the feedback in terms of, I believe I'm qualified for this role. I have everything, I can check every single box. I have more experience than the person that was hired. And the only thing that I see that's different is that the person who was hired was a white male and I'm a Latina woman. That's the only difference that I see based on the job spec. That's a legitimate conversation to have with an individual within the organization that you can explore, right? And you can just present it that way. I would like to explore what disqualified me for this position. This is when you're talking about an internal position and you have more insight into who was hired, how many years of experience they have, where do they come from. And if you find that it's limited to their ethnicity and how they look versus their qualifications, I think it's legit to say, let's explore what was the reason behind Mina being hired for this role, because I want to prepare for the next one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think the other thing too is just like Rome was not built in a day, right? But it sure was destroyed in like one. I think we have to honestly really hone into the authority bucket of empowerment around how we build the confidence here. I know that a lot of times I was in these kinds of conversations and trying to grow my career even further. And then I realized that, that there's a predetermined, sometimes leaders, ultimate leaders who are hiring for the next leadership position have a predetermined position of, just think that you have to build the confidence up and then you need to bring the statistical data, the power part. So the authority and the power part of empowerment, the power part being some sort of data or metric that's going to speak to your difference that you hold on to. So I often obviously quote a lot of times that there are more than 2 million transgender people who live in the United States. And I'll share that in a job interview. And then I'll also share that the economic buying power of just the LGBT businesses in the US is $1.7 trillion. And that's the 10th largest economy in the world. And I'll talk about it in that sense. So, I would challenge somebody who's talking about this in relation to another difference, like a race difference or ethnic difference, to share the economic statistic about that community during the interview. So that way the person understands that in the grand scheme of things, of the scope of that entire person means that they're bringing this expertise and they're bringing this power element with that hire. And when you do that, I think you will have holistically more success long term. You may always encounter the no from the person who's just not going to be comfortable with people. And I've had that as feedback. Oh, well, we think that you are going to blow things up a little bit too much, or you're too much to handle, right? I know that those are going to happen, but on the grand scheme of things over the course of the history, it's knowing that what the information you're sharing has value.
So what I'm hearing is Ashley, that use your difference to your advantage.
Yes, yes. Leverage differences to impact change. It's
Absolutely.
literally
I love it.
headline. Oh wait, here you go. Leverage differences to impact change. There
Absolutely.
you go.
Beautiful.
Branding.
Yeah. So
And
let's go into creating opportunities, right? Because
yes,
we can sit here all day and talk about the issues and challenges and what we recommend. But at the end of the day, I'm a results focused coach. I always like to walk away with, okay, what can we do to address this? So if the challenge is that people are not feeling valued and people are not feeling a sense of belonging and they are leaving your company after you've spent the time and money to recruit them, hire them, you develop them, and then they leave you, obviously we are leaving money on the table we're back to square one, finding another candidate, especially women leaders, female leaders, finding another candidate. We've already know the statistics and the research around the value of having a diverse leadership team. We know that companies that do perform better than companies that don't. It's part of the beauty of diversity. And so, as an organization, what can you do as it relates to building that leadership pipeline that is diverse, that includes female leaders? And that's where Ashley and I come into play. My program, the Fearless Leadership Mastermind, was designed using these use cases, real life experiences that I've had, and the research shows that women encounter and face every single day. When you are developing your leaders, are you using a sustainable, scalable approach? Are you doing it consistently? And if you think and I say this with love and compassion, if we think that by sending our leaders to a 1 day training or the 2 day training, and that's going to be enough for them to gain the essential skills leaders need to have today to lead powerfully, to lead, engage, and influence their people, to take our businesses to the next level, to help us create more well-being and mental health in the workplace. If we think that that's going to be the case, then we're basically diluting ourselves, because it doesn't work that way. Behavioral changes take time. Developing confidence, learning how to influence your environment takes time. So the leadership program that my company, Executive Bound, developed is called the Fearless Leadership Mastermind. And it was designed specifically to help leaders gain those essential skills over the course of 6 months. So this is why in July, I have the free Fearless Leaders Challenge to give people a sample of what that looks like. So if you have leaders that you want to send to my challenge in July, please send them to executivebound.com/events. They can register there. They can get a taste of what it would be like to be with community, to be able to mastermind, and to be coached in a group and individually. And that's how you really harness your self leadership and get yourself to the next level. Because ultimately, our leaders need the tools, and they need to gain them in a way that's sustainable, because everybody's busy, has so much on their plate. So we got to create a structure to support them.
Yeah, we have to shift their gear from being busy to being productive. Right? That's
Exactly.
so just a quick question, because I know that I have a few questions. I'm just thinking about this this mastermind, the actual program, not the teaser in July. Definitely wait, one more time. The teaser in July, executivebound.com/events. That's where you can sign up. Do that. But when I'm ready to sign up for the actual
Mastermind.
mastermind, can you give us a little bit more, like, what's the cost? I know you said it was how many months. Can you expand a little bit?
Yeah, so what happens is, Ashley, I work with Fortune 500 companies of all sizes, and my goal is to develop their leaders. So what I would recommend, if anyone who's listening is interested in the Fearless Leadership Mastermind, go to flmprogram.com and you will get the details. Because what I want to do is I want to have an empowering conversation with the leader who wants to develop their female leaders, and really find out what are the challenges, what are the objectives, and then we can define and really get clear on what is it that we're trying to achieve. And I'll go into what is the Fearless Leadership Mastermind, how it works for them, and the pricing really depends on how many leaders they put in the program. So we have cohorts that run only up to 10 people. And so that I have this ability to engage with the group in an intimate way. We meet once every 2 weeks for 6 months. We have online training ready for them. And all of this happens when we have this conversation and we have a 15-minute cyber coffee and we connect. So when you go to flmprogram.com, you'll get the link to set up a 15-minute cyber coffee with me. We'll dive into what you need and what you're looking to do. And then I'll be able to share everything with you about the program.
So awesome. I'm so glad that I was able to. I was able to be quick and put it in the show
Thank
notes
you
there.
so much, Ashley. So tell us about you, Ashley, and what is it that how do you help companies?
Yeah,
Uh,
so I do leadership and empowerment cohorts. It's kind of similar to what you're, in the model you're doing. But I have a really special program that I want to highlight today, or whenever you're watching from wherever you are in the world. I'm going to be doing a once in a lifetime type of leadership conference. Sometimes we do send people to a leadership retreat, and we send them to, a hotel in a random city, and then it's like they're still kind of in their normal realm. Well, I'm going to put them in something that's going to literally take them out of their normal realm completely, called the Voyage of Empowerment.
Yay!
Uh, and yes, I'm going to be standing right on the front of that Royal Caribbean ship. The conference is being sponsored by Royal Caribbean's employee resource groups. I'm going to be featuring a litany of keynote speakers on leadership and empowerment experts across age, differences, status, class, educational level, race, ethnicity. Like literally all the differences are covered, that will talk about empowerment for all those differences. So if you're thinking about attending that event, I highly recommend that you join the Voyage of Empowerment. It's a leadership conference like no other.
What is the
And
website, Ashley? Where will they
yeah,
go?
you can sign up. You can sign up right from my website. You can do that, and you can also go right in. There's a pathway here, right, to make your booking directly there. And you can use my coupon code that you see on the top of the screen there, VOE100, which would save you $100 off the booking. But
Right.
if you hold on to empowerment through a corporate backer, who's always championing for your leadership development, you just let me know. I'll send you the flyer for the conference, and you can submit it to them and get them to pay for it. Same thing with the mastermind, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, have the organization that holds on to the empowerment, have them pay for these things. Not that you couldn't pay for it yourself, but much, much, much easier to get the corporation to pay for it, because that's literally they have a budget outline for that. Trust me, I did DE&I
Yeah.
at PNC Bank for 6 years, and the leadership development budget and talent, man, like all those budgets were like 4 times the size of the DEI budget.
Well, Ashley, you're bringing up a really good point, and I'm so glad that we got here because ultimately we can attend all the lives that we want. We can go to all the, webinars and Zooms and whatever trainings you see. Even my free Fearless Leaders Challenge in July. And ultimately, you as the leader have to take responsibility, right? You have to say, this is my career, this is my life. If I want to continue to grow in my leadership role, if I want to continue to ascend, if I want to have a bigger impact and work with more purpose, we need to do the work and develop ourselves. And Ashley's mentioning, hey, by the way, your company may be able to support you financially to do this because it behooves everybody involved that you become a better leader, a more inclusive leader. But if you are not willing to raise your hand and say, I am ready to grow, I am ready to put in the effort, nothing's going to happen. And if we don't put in the effort, 12 months from now, we'll be having the same conversation we're having today. So that's what we don't want to happen. There's many different vehicles for us to grow, whether it's attending the Empowering Differences Voyage, the Empowering Voyage, whether it's going to the Fearless Leaders Challenge in July, whether it's joining the Fearless Leadership Mastermind, whether it's doing one of Ashley's, trainings. There's many vehicles to do it as long as you know that it requires you to say, okay, I'm going to do this for myself so that I can be a better leader. That's step number one. So I'm inviting you, uh, asking that you take that first step
Yeah,
and that you raise your hand and then look for the support that you may need to attend and to be there.
I love it. Take the first step to empower others and along in this journey. It's It's what's needed. It's why rising tides lift all boats. It's
Well,
literally
both
why I'm doing a conference on a cruise ship, right? To have the
here
rising tide lift all boats together because we can be stronger together.
together we
Um,
rise.
exactly.
Absolutely.
That trust me, that was not lost in my idea of having a leadership and empowerment conference on a boat.
Absolutely.
Yes, the
Yeah.
symbolic nature there definitely was
Yeah,
something.
and Ashley, something that we should probably also think just mention is that we know the tragedy that just happened in Texas.
Mhm.
And we know that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And part of being an influential and inclusive leader is to also be aware of what our employees are going through. And not everybody is going to digest information in the same way. I know, for example, I got on a call yesterday with a client who was very distraught over what had happened in Texas because she has a young son. And she thought, oh my goodness, my son's going to go to school in September of this month. And just the thought of dropping off my son at school and not knowing whether he's going to be safe when I go pick him up, that in itself was such a distressful thought for her that the first 10 minutes of our coaching session was really kind of walking her through that and how she felt about that. And so, as we talk about mental health and being inclusive leaders, think about how your behaviors as a leader are impacting the people that you work with. How distressed are they by your behaviors, or how calming and empowered do they feel by your behaviors? And if you are a responsible leader, and I say this with love, then you will do whatever it takes to become a better version of yourself as a leader. And that's why we are here to support you to do that. Because I always say, Ashley, you cannot give yourself a good haircut. You just can't. So you need
I
a
would
coach,
never trust anyone other
right?
than
You need a
Mark
coach.
Retzloff to do my hair.
Exactly. I cannot give myself a good haircut, so I rely on my coaches to help me and help me accelerate. And
Yeah,
that's what we're helping. That's what we're here hoping to do for you too.
my God. I'm living for that. No, Dr. Jenny, how do people follow you on social media?
So I am all over LinkedIn. That's where I live. So in LinkedIn, search for Dr. Ginny Barrow. I'll pop up and you can connect with me. I have over 23,000 connections. So please connect with me and you'll be connected to my entire network. Let me know where you met me. We saw each other here at the Empowering Differences event on inclusive leadership, and I will accept your invitation and we will connect. You can also find me. I mean, that's my number one place. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, but that's just almost for fun, right? I do all my
Right.
business really on LinkedIn. But go to executivebound.com/events and you will find what I'm up to. I'm always up to something.
I love it. Yes, executivebound.com/events. That's where you can sign up for the free leadership training. Yeah, no, this has been a great hour. I'm so glad that we got to spend it together. Um, and yeah, it looks like we had another chat. What is
Yes.
the best? Yeah, really quickly. I guess
Raise
I
your
quoted that.
hand. That's the
Yes.
best way to give feedback to leadership. Raise your hand. Tell them, I want to continue growing as a leader. I would like to attend the Fearless Leadership Mastermind. I would like to go the Empowering Differences Voyage. That's how you do it.
Yes.
Sometimes we think they're going to tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, Ginny, would you like to go to training? And if you wait for that invitation, you're going to be waiting a very long time.
Yes. Oh,
So
yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
raise your hand.
Yeah. Raise your hand, speak up, speak out, stand out. And then if you're facing the challenges, make it somebody else's idea that you go. I don't know how many times that somebody else recommends me for an award or something. It's not me. It's someone else that does that.
Yeah,
So you have to
absolutely.
have lots of someone else's doing that. You need to keep track of those people.
You have to gain your advocates and your allies.
Yes.
And like I said before, when we were talking about influencing, if you know that you want a training and you want to find out what would be the best approach for me to address it with my leadership, go to somebody else who's already done it and say, hey, Ashley, hey, Ginny, I've been thinking about doing more leadership training and there's this program. How do you think I should approach my leadership about it?
I
Get
love
some
it.
ideas.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It looks like we got some more closing comments.
Yay.
Oh, there's Dr. Charmaine Patton.
Thank you, Dr. Charmian.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yes,
Ashley, this has been so much fun. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I can't wait to watch the replay.
yes.
And lots of goodies and lots of advice that we hope will help you get yourself to your next level, but more importantly, to live with purpose and live with joy.
I love it. All right.
Bye, everybody.
We're out.